Where does your consciousness really go after death? Buddhism's answer. Chapter 1. What is consciousness, really? Most people think consciousness is like a small person sitting inside their head, watching everything happen. They imagine it as their true self, or their soul, something solid and permanent that makes them who they are. But Buddhism says this picture is completely wrong. When you look in the mirror, you see your face. But that face changes every day. Your skin cells die and new ones grow. Your hair gets longer. Even your thoughts change from moment to moment. So where is this permanent you that people talk about? Buddhism teaches that consciousness is not a thing at all. It's not like a marble that rolls from one place to another. The Mahatanha Sankhya Sutta, one of the Buddha's teachings, explains it clearly. Consciousness is dependently arisen. This means consciousness only exists because of other conditions, like thoughts, feelings, and experiences mixing together. Think of it like this. When you feel angry, where does that anger live? You can't point to it. You can't hold it in your hand. It comes and goes based on what happens around you. Consciousness works the same way. Here's where a simple example helps. When you light a new candle with an old flame, something continues, but it's not the same flame. The light passes on, but it changes form. This is exactly how consciousness works. A Greek philosopher named Heraclitus said, "You can't step in the same river twice." The water keeps flowing, so it's always different water. Your consciousness flows like that river. Each moment brings new thoughts, new feelings, new experiences. You're not the same person you were yesterday, but something connects yesterday's you to today's you. Modern brain science agrees with this ancient wisdom. Scientists can't find a central self in the brain. Instead, they see many different processes working together: memory, attention, emotion, and thinking. These processes create what we call consciousness, but there's no single controller running the show. Most people think death is like turning off a light switch. One moment you're here, the next moment you're gone. But Buddhism sees death more like water changing into steam. The form changes, but something continues. When your body dies, the flow of consciousness doesn't just stop. It transforms, just like water becomes steam when heated. The conditions that created your current consciousness change, so consciousness takes a different form. This doesn't mean you float away as a ghost. It means the patterns of energy and information that made up your consciousness keep moving, but in a new way. Chapter 2. The Buddhist view of death. Not the end, but a transition. In most movies, death looks like a wall. The hero runs toward it, hits it, and everything stops. But Buddhism sees death as a doorway. You don't hit a wall. You walk through an opening into something new. You've probably heard the word karma before. Many people think it means what goes around comes around, like cosmic payback. But the real meaning is much simpler and more practical. Karma means intentional action. Not just any action, but action that comes from your will and purpose. When you accidentally bump into someone, that's just movement. When you choose to help someone or choose to hurt someone, that's karma. The key word here is choose. Your intentions shape your mind in ways that random accidents cannot. When you practice piano with the intention to improve, you get better at piano. When you practice kindness with genuine care, you train your mind in compassion. When you practice anger with the intention to harm, you train your mind in aggression. Your intentional actions build deep patterns in your consciousness. The Bija Sutta, another ancient Buddhist text, explains this with a farming metaphor. Consciousness is the seed, karma is the field, and craving is the moisture. Thus, for beings hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving, consciousness is established in a lower realm. This means your intentional actions, karma, the field, create the conditions for the stream of consciousness, the seed, to be established in a certain way or place, the realm. The patterns you cultivate through intention act like a compass, guiding the direction of the conscious stream. When death comes, your consciousness continues this stream of becoming, flowing forward. Buddhism describes this not as a person jumping to another body, but as a stream of conditions continuing, like music flowing from one instrument to another. The melody continues, but the sound is different. The stream of consciousness that was you keeps flowing after death, but it changes form, conditioned by the patterns you've built. This is not the same as reincarnation in popular movies, where a fixed self reappears. Buddhism teaches, the pattern continues, not the person. Just like you're not the same as your 5-year-old self, the new consciousness is not the same as your current consciousness, but it's connected by the flow of conditioning. This matches what physicists tell us about energy. Energy cannot be destroyed, it only changes form. When you burn wood, the energy doesn't disappear. It becomes heat and light. Consciousness, as a flow of patterns, works similarly. Consider how your childhood fears shaped your adult behavior. The influence travels through time without the original experience staying intact. In the same way, the predominant patterns shaped by your intentional actions now will condition and influence the future flow of consciousness. Chapter 3. The 6 realms, where consciousness can reappear. Buddhism describes 6 different realms where the stream of consciousness can reappear. But here's the key point. These realms are not just physical places. They are fundamental states or patterns of mind that the conscious stream can manifest as here and now and after death. Following the direction established by karma, intentional actions and intentions, the stream of consciousness can flow into one of these 6 fundamental patterns of experience. These 6 realms are gods, demigods, humans, animals, hungry ghosts, and hell beings. At first, this might sound like fantasy, but Buddhist teachers explain these as the different forms consciousness takes when it is dominated by particular mental states or poisons: pride, jealousy, ignorance, craving, and hatred. The God realm is consciousness dominated by pride and pleasure-seeking. The demigod realm is consciousness dominated by jealousy and competition. The human realm represents a balance, capable of joy and suffering, and crucially, capable of awakening. The animal realm is consciousness dominated by ignorance and instinct. The hungry ghost realm is consciousness dominated by intense craving, addiction, and dissatisfaction. The hell realm is consciousness dominated by hatred, anger, and aggression. You can see aspects of these states in daily life. Some minds live in constant anger, hell state. Others live in constant craving, hungry ghost state. Some minds are clouded by ignorance, animal state. These realms are the full manifestation of these ingrained mental patterns. So, what determines which of these forms the stream of consciousness will take next? It is the weight, prominence, and nature of the mental patterns and intentions cultivated through intentional action in this life. The consciousness, conditioned by these dominant patterns, naturally flows into the realm, state of mind, experience, that corresponds to its fundamental nature. The Kulakama Vibhanga Sutta underscores this. Beings are owners of their karma, heirs of their karma, born of their karma, related by their karma, and have karma as their arbiter. Because you are the owner and heir of your intentional actions, the deep patterns these actions create become the arbiter of your next state of experience, the realm where the stream of consciousness will be established. Modern psychology observes how repeated thoughts and actions build strong neural pathways, creating deep-seated habits. Buddhism teaches that these ingrained mental habits don't just influence your behavior now, they are the substance that gives rise to these different realms of experience for the continuing stream of consciousness. The mind you cultivate in this life, with its dominant patterns of craving, anger, ignorance, or perhaps compassion and wisdom, determines the fundamental nature of the stream's next manifestation. What you practice most becomes the core pattern of your conscious flow, and this core pattern determines the realm of experience where that flow continues. Chapter 4. The Escape from Rebirth, the Buddhist Goal. Buddhism is not about wandering through different realms forever. The goal is to wake up from this entire cycle. This awakening is called Nirvana, a word that means blowing out or extinguishing. Buddhism teaches that we're caught in a cycle called samsara, endless rebirth driven by ignorance, craving, and attachment. Think of it like a hamster wheel. The hamster runs and runs, but never gets anywhere. The wheel keeps turning because the hamster keeps running. The Mahanidana Sutta explains how this cycle works. With ignorance as condition, volitional formations come to be. With volitional formations as condition, consciousness comes to be. This means ignorance creates habits, habits create consciousness, and consciousness creates more ignorance. Here's how it works in daily life. You don't understand how your mind works, so you react to everything based on craving and aversion. These reactions create patterns in your consciousness. These patterns make you react the same way in the future, creating more ignorance. For example, someone insults you. If you don't understand how your mind works, you might react with anger. This anger creates a pattern in your consciousness. Next time someone insults you, you react with anger again. The pattern gets stronger. Soon, you're an angry person who sees insults everywhere. This cycle continues after death. Your consciousness, trained in anger, creates conditions for more anger in your next experience. Nirvana is not a place you go to after death. It's not heaven or paradise. Nirvana is the end of craving, the end of the cycle, the end of the wheel turning. When you fully understand how your mind works, you stop reacting based on craving and aversion. When you stop creating these patterns, the cycle stops. This is like the hamster stepping off the wheel. The wheel stops turning because the hamster stops running. In Nirvana, there's no more becoming because there's no more craving to drive the process. Consciousness doesn't continue in the same way because the conditions that created it have ended. It's like a fire going out when you stop adding fuel. People often ask, after enlightenment, do you exist or not exist? The Buddha refused to answer this question. He said it was like asking, after a fire goes out, where does it go? North, south, East? West? The question doesn't make sense because fire doesn't go anywhere. When the conditions for fire end, fire simply stops. Similarly, when the conditions for becoming end, becoming simply stops. This is hard for our minds to grasp because we think in terms of existing or not existing. But nirvana is beyond these categories. It's not existence and it's not non-existence. It's the end of the process that creates existence and non-existence. The philosopher Wittgenstein once said, "Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent." This applies to nirvana. We can't describe it in ordinary language because ordinary language is built on the very concepts that nirvana transcends. The Buddha compared trying to explain nirvana to a fish trying to describe water to a bird. Both live in their element so completely that they can't step outside it to see what it really is. Chapter 5. The Real Answer and Why It Matters Now. We started with a simple question. Where does consciousness go after death? Now we can see the answer is not a simple geographical location or a single destination for everyone. Buddhism doesn't give one answer for everyone. It gives you a mirror to see your own mind. The real answer is, your stream of consciousness goes where it has been conditioned to go by the patterns you cultivate. If you cultivate patterns of anger, the stream is conditioned towards states of anger. If you cultivate patterns of compassion, the stream is conditioned towards states of compassion. The Dhammapada, one of Buddhism's most famous texts, opens with these words: "Mind precedes all mental states. Mind is their chief. They are all mind-wrought. If with an impure mind, a person speaks or acts, suffering follows him like the wheel that follows the foot of the ox." This means your mind, shaped by your intentional actions and habits, your karma, creates the nature of your reality, both now and as the stream continues. The thoughts you think, the emotions you feel, the actions you take, these build the patterns that condition your consciousness. And your consciousness, flowing forward, manifests according to those dominant patterns. This is both scary and hopeful. It's scary because you're responsible for the conditioning of your own stream. You can't blame bad luck or other people for the states of mind you experience. But it's hopeful because you have the power to change the conditioning. Every moment gives you a chance to build new, more wholesome patterns in your mind. This teaching is not meant to satisfy your curiosity about death. It's meant to wake you up to the importance of this moment. Right now, you are building the patterns that condition your future consciousness. Every thought matters. Every action matters. Every word matters. Most people worry about what happens after death, but they don't pay attention to what happens after this moment. Buddhism says the two are connected. How you live now, the patterns you cultivate in your mind and through your actions, determines the nature of the stream of consciousness that continues after death. This makes every moment precious. You're not just living your life, you're conditioning your future consciousness. You're not just making decisions, you're training your mind's patterns. You're not just existing, you're becoming. The Buddha never promised that spiritual practice would be easy. He promised that it would lead to freedom from suffering. This freedom comes through understanding your mind, seeing its patterns, and training it wisely. The Buddha's final words, recorded in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, were, "Now, bhikkhus, I declare to you, all conditioned things are of a nature to vanish. Strive with diligence. He was telling his students that everything changes, everything passes away, so make good use of your time by cultivating wisdom and compassion. This practice requires courage, because you have to face your own mind's patterns. It requires honesty, because you have to see them clearly. It requires patience, because changing deep conditioning takes time. But it's worth it, because it leads to real peace and freedom from the suffering realms. Buddhism doesn't offer an easy escape from life's challenges. It offers a path through them, a path of understanding and training the stream of consciousness itself. This path requires effort, but it leads somewhere real. And it begins right now, with this moment, with this breath, with this choice to cultivate wholesome patterns. Most people spend their whole lives running from themselves, but Buddhist practice asks you to turn around and look. What you find might surprise you, not a monster or a saint, but simply a process that can be understood and guided. The freedom comes not from getting rid of consciousness, but from learning to work with its conditioning skillfully. Where your consciousness goes after death depends on what you're doing with it right now. The question is not just what happens after you die. The question is what happens after you finish listening to this. That's where the continued stream of your consciousness begins its next moment.